Hello, can anybody hear me? Yes, good. Okay. Okay, Shalom Aleichem. Just make sure we're recording. Yes, we are. Okay. Just wanted to dedicate today's shir for the refuah of Tzvi Chaim ben Helena Shendel. That's Stika Reisman in Los Angeles, who is in ICU on a respirator, and should be a schus for his refuah. There are people saying Tillim around the clock for him. He's one of the biggest supporters and builders of Torah in this generation. You might have seen the Sforim Ratzka Tzvi, or the art scroll, the books, art scroll books on the months, Jewish months, or on the Hebrew alphabet, which are his. Or you might have used HebrewBooks.org, which is something that he built and pays for. Someone who gives tremendous amount of shirim and writes Sforim, despite that he's running $1 billion corporation on top of that and supporting a tremendous amount of Torah and Chesed. So Sharav for Shlema. Okay. So we are to try to finish off today, B'li Neder. We are at, take a look at in Reish Pei Zayin in Sif Aleph, that Shulchan Aruch says, "Ein Pesach Chayav b'mezuzah el im ken yesh lo shtei mezuzos u'mashkef." So this is the Shittas Rambam, which you need to have 2 mezuzahs to be chayav. The Shach points out that the Shita of the Torah, based on the Rush, is that 1 mezuzah is enough as long as that mezuzah is b'tzad yamin. So the Maisa, more machmir for that if you have taka a situation where you have a mezuzah on one side, as long as it's not on the left side but it's on the right side, and so you have a mezuzah and a mashkof on the way into a house or into a hallway or something, then we do put it up. But because of the Shittas Rambam and Shulchan Aruch, we would put it up without a bracha. Even if it has a doorway, we put it up without a bracha in that case. So the also the Taz and the Shach both paskin this way, the Chumrah, that one side is enough. And we have the other halacha here as well, which, again, we're not really going into all these things again like we did last time. We're just sort of reviewing quickly all these halachas. That the other din over here, which is brought down, and the Taz speaks more by Riches from the Rush, the way the Rush learns shot in the Gemara, is that the hein p'simav are, when it says that you have the p'simim which are chayav, is referring to the walls themselves. If you have, let's say, imagine a structure that has that's like this. So then these 2 ends here are the p'simim. There's the way you walk in, even though there's no actual doorway like that. So then the ends of the Rosh Aksalim, the end of the walls, those are considered the p'simim to be considered a Pesach. So if there's a mashkaf on top of that, then it would be chayav. And so the Taz over here brings down Siyurim, but the mice of the Aruch HaShulchan holds that the Rush himself is only mechayev if it's not just the mamish the end of the walls, but they actually turn in a little bit. They can't just be ends of walls to be chayev. But the Olam seems to be machmer with that, not like the Aruch HaShulchan. So again, there we would put it up without a bracha. If you would have like a structure like that would end with that, it would just be. We're looking at there's the back end, here's the front end, and so according to the Aruch HaShulchan, it's only if they're bent a little bit at the ends would be chayav, but we'd be machmer even if it was just the ends itself without a bracha. Now a few other Tanaim over here, the Shulchan Aruch does not mention. What the Shach brings down is that the Shitas, well, the Shach actually is really in Beis. We'll wait for a minute for that. We'll into Beis first, then we'll come to some of these other nafkaminas. So there's one thing that's important here, that Indian of Rosh Aksalim, which tells us that even if you don't have an actual doorway that was made the Shema doorway, but you have walls that are put there to be around a structure or around an area is enough to be Machayev. The Rosh Eksalim and the walls themselves have a chiyuv. So the Mikdash Ma'at, we spoke out at the time that the Mikdash Ma'at Paskins and the Chovas Adar goes with this, is that the Rosh Eksalim, or the walls themselves, are only chayav when they're made for the sake of the area that we're walking into. If you have, let's say, and I sent you some pictures before the shiur. If you look on the WhatsApp, I can find it here. I sent you a few pictures in my house. There, let's say, I sent a picture in my house. So you can see that where the chair is there's a corner that goes into a hallway. So Lu Yitzir, there would be a mashkuf going across there on the hallway. So you have a right side and you have a mashkuf. But according to Mikdash Ma'at, that would not count. If you look at that picture, because the reason that wall was built was not for the sake of the hallway. The wall there is that wall, that the kosel there is the outside wall of the office that you see off to the right. So it was built for the sake of that. It was not built as to be a wall for the hallway, although it formed a hallway, but it was made as a wall for another room. So the Iker wall is there for the sake of the room, not for the hallway. It just happens to be a hallway comes out once there's a wall there. That'll be put there. And if you look at, there's a few pictures that I sent below that, a few examples of that. Like you look in the first one, on the picture on top, where you can see that there's a chutzner formed by having two buildings on either side, and then there's a mashkuf going over the top. So it comes out that there's a mashkuf and two mezuzahs on either side, but the sake of those mezuzahs were built just to be walls of those two houses, not for the sake of making a chutzner. Memela came out that there's a chutzner there, but that's not why it was built. It wasn't a separate chutzner wall. So even though it has a mashkuf going over on top of it, that area is patur according to this Mikdash Ma'at. So there's many nafkaminas in this. It's a very common shaila, very common case. You see it as well in the picture of Zion below that, where there you walk into a chutzner, and then you have rooms on either side of the far end, where those walls, and then there's a top going over, a mashkuf going over it. Again, it was made for the sake of those rooms, not the chutzner. Would also be patur. And here's a more common case in a chadar madrigot, or an entrance hall to like a building in Eretz Yisrael, where you have a chutzner on either side, and you have the walls for the chutzneros on either side, but then Mamela forms the entrance to that building. You see the doorway there, and there's a thing going over at the top, that mashkov. Again, it's patur there because those walls were not formed. They're formed as outside walls of the chutzneros on the right and left side. And then you look further in the next picture, a similar case, we have picture Aleph on top there, where again you have a peanut, you have the beginning of the right building and the end of the right building. Both of them have potential corners there that you might call Rosh Eksalim that should be chayav, but we say that patur because that wall is forming the left wall of that right building, and therefore either corner of that is not a reason to be mechayev, even though there's a mashkaf on top. So there are many cases like that. So it's important to get that down. Look at those pictures carefully, and keep that in mind. That the Rosh Eksalim and the sugya is only chayev when the Rosh Eksalim are for the sake of the area that's being surrounded, not for the sake of other rooms and mamela that comes out that way. Okay, now going on to Sif Beis, we have the Baishish Lo Mezuzah economy Kipa Kamin Keshes Hal Shtei Mezuzahs Makam Mashkof Im Yesh Begova Mezuzahs Arsar Tvachim Yoser Chayav Im Ein Vo Arsar Tvachim Pater Shein Lo Mashkof. So here we have this case over here of a kipa, of a rounded top. So the Shulchan Aruch is paskening like the Rambam. You need to have mezuzah shel asara mikan, and only then starts the kippah. Unlike Rashi, there were two mahalchim in Rashi, but one is that you had at least three gova of straight up and down, and then you have for the rest on, you have kippah, as long as there's 10 high in a place where where you would have dalet tefachim across, because remember, according to Rashi, you need dalet tefachim to be considered a Pesach. The Shulchan Aruch Agav doesn't mention dalet tefachim. The Shach does, B'Shem Rashi and the Mordechai, and because the Rambam also does not mention dalet tefachim is the width of the door, necessary width. But Rashi, if you remember, learned the whole sugya that it's about the chokek and the hashlim, and Reb Meir and everything was all about dalet tefachim. So according to Rashi, a Tanai and the Pesach is dalet tefachim. So according to Rashi himself, if you have dalet tefachim across, even if it starts rounding itself, but the rounding it still remains more than dalet tefachim till the point that you get to 10. So then it's still chayav, even though you don't have 10 straight up and down on the sides. You only have 3, let's say. And according to Rashi and Erevin, that was the case even if they had no straight up and down. The entire thing was rounded, but you could measure 4 across and 10 high before it gets less than 4 across. You can get to 10 high. So then it's also chayav according to Rashi. The Shulchan Aruch didn't mention that shita, but the Taz, if you remember, the Taz went through a tremendous cheshbon over here that since we hold that shlish elyon is ma'akev, the upper shlish, if it's not upper shlish, we hold it's ma'akev. So where do you measure that shlish? If you have, let's say, a 10 tefachim high straight across, and then it remains more than 4 across and it's rounded, according to Rashi, the shlish elyon will be considerably higher than according to the Rambam. According to the Rambam, shlish elyon is only going to be, you only are machashev the 10 tefachim high that are straight up and down. Anything rounded doesn't count. That according to the Rambam, anything that's rounded goes into the calculation of the mashkof. It's no longer sides. So if it's, let's say, 10 tefachim straight up and down, and then another 10 tefachim rounded before it gets less than 4. So according to the Rambam, the shlish elyon is the upper third of the lower 10. According to Rashi, it's the upper third of the entire 20, which is a whole different area. And each one is not yotzi according to the other. According to Rashi, so if you put it where the Rambam needs to be, you're not yotze because it's below the upper third. According to the Rambam, if you put it up where Rashi says it needs to be, in the upper third of the upper 20, you count the rounded part as well, then it's going to be, you're putting it on the mashkof. You're not putting it on the mezuzahs, because the rounded part is a mashkof for the Rambam. So you're not yotze one according either or. So he has a whole cheshbon, the Taz over here. The Maisa, the poskim take on, not like the Taz, they take on, the Taz says you should put it on the higher part. Some say you should put 2 of them. The Maisa Achronim all say not to put 2, and since the Shulchan Aruch paskins only the Rambam, not Rashi, so therefore the Ikar Din is that we put it just in the upper shlish of the zakuf, of the straight up and down part. That's how the Maisa the Achronim paskin. And just another point in Shitas Rashi that even though so Rashi holds that you need 4, the Rambam doesn't mention anything about 4 or cross, 4 wide, 4 tefachim wide in the Shulchan Aruch. But the Achronim say that even according to the Rambam, it doesn't require 4, that you for sure need at least 3. If it's less than 3 tefachim, so then it's lavud. Then it's considered sasam. It's considered there's not even not to be a Pesach in halacha, like in a sukkah or whatever. If you have less than 3, that it's lavud. So here we're doing over by a Pesach with less than 3 tefachim, it would be lavud, it would be pater. And also we have a tanai of asara gavoa, like this. It has to be 10 high. Like sometimes you have little doorways to little kids' houses or whatever. So they're less than 10 tefachim high. Those not considered a Pesach either. Another thing that Achronim point out over here is that just like the 10 up and down need to be zakuf, they need to be straight up and down. The doorway itself also has to be straight up and down. If the doorway is mushkav, it's laying down, like a cellar door that goes down to a cellar, or an attic door. Like many houses have an attic, you open it up and then you take down the stairway and you go up in the attic. So the door is mushkav, it's lying flat rather than up and down. So the Piskei Tshuva brings down, and all the Achronim Paskin this way, based on a drush of the Gemara, that it has to be standing straight up and down to be considered a Pesach, Yuchayv, and a Mezuzah. So those are a few nafkaminas in this siman. We skip over now to, we didn't learn Kut Reish Pei Ches, but the Ksivas Mezuzah. We skip over to Reish Pei Tes, the Makam Kviyas Mezuzah. And again, we're not going into the whole siman. We're just going to speak out a few points. The Maisa out of the simanim. So, yes.
We're not going to go like the Rashi, even without a bracha, and on an entrance that's circular the whole way.
Thank you.
Put it up without a bracha.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I forgot to point that out. That in a case where there's not a stira between Rashi and the Rambam, in other words, very good. That if you have 10 up and down, and then you have the kippah, so then we go like the Rambam. But you're right. If there is no straight up and down, or there's less than 10, let's say it's only 3 or whatever, so then according to the Rambam is patra the gamrei, then there's no steer now between Rashi and the Rambam. Rambam holds patra, Rashi holds chayav. We certainly will put it up to be yotzei shitas Rashi, just without a bracha, because the ikar din is like the Rambam. But where it's not a steer, there's no reason not to be yotzei shitas Rashi and put it up. Especially since many other Rishonim hold that way. So thank you for mentioning that. Okay, in Reish Pei Tes, so we say over here, we put it into a mezuzah case, as we saw the Achronim part now, the daska in a case not wide open because you want to touch it and you're going to ruin it by touching it. And also for other reasons, when it's inside the house, then we had many situations where it needed to be covered because of its sneas. So we dafka have it covered in a case. Put it in its place, and then v'yivarach Asher Kadeshanim Sasav V'tzivanu Lekabaya Mezuzah. V'yivarach B'shas Ksivasa. We don't make the bracha when you're writing it. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the Hilchos Mezuzah, that the ksiva is just a hechsher mitzvah. It's not a chelik of the actual mitzvah. But the ikar mitzvah is really the kviyas mezuzah, and you make the bracha at that time. And it's pointed out in the Achronim over here that we break the bracha l'kabua mezuzah singular, even if you're putting out many mezuzahs, because each door is a chiyuv b'fnei atzma. Mashenken, we saw this contrasted with hilchos tfilas kelim, that over there you make the bracha al tfilas kelim plural, because generally we make it many kelim and it's like one mitzvah to be tovel many kelim. The Achronim speak about the distinction, but here it's lashon yachid, and over by tfilas kelim it's lashon rabin. Okay. Now if the Piskei Tshuva has a shala here, we didn't really go into it so much last time. The Piskei Tshuva goes into a question: if you take off the mezuzahs for the sake of the bedika, because we're supposed to check it twice. We'll see at the end of the very last siman that you're supposed to check it twice every 7 years, or if you have any other reason to check it, like it got wet and you have a reason to be suspicious, you take it down and check it. So if you put it up right away that day, since you had das to put it up, then they compare it to if you take off your talis for one reason or another and put it back on again for davening, then you don't make a new bracha if you have das to put it back on. And so similar over here, you don't make a new bracha unless the Aruch HaShulchan paskins that if it's going to be for one day to the next, or it's going to go overnight, so then you would make another bracha. It's very common, especially if you're living in small towns. You don't have anybody to check it. People send it, overnight it to New York or whatever, and they check it and they're sending it back. So if it's going to be overnight, the next day already, then you do make a new bracha. And also, even if it's the same day, if you're not makpi to put, ideally you should put mezuzahs back. You should mark where they're from and put them back in the same doors they came off of. Once they're in one door, you keep it, put it back in the same door. But if one did not do that, they got mixed up, whatever, and they're going to go back in different doors, then it's like you're starting the mitzvah all over again, and you would, even the same day, you would make a new bracha. Or also, if one of them was
And if you,
possible, and you have to add a new mezuzah. Anytime you add a new mezuzah, then for sure you make a new bracha. Yes.
what if you put it back up in like not in the same nail, like the nail hole? Like, do you need
It
a
doesn't
new
matter.
bracha?
Yeah, that's not makir, but just as long as it's in the same doorway, then it's the same.
Okay.
Okay, so and so the Aruch HaShulchan, like, it says that it's one day or the next. I heard from Shmuel first that we're knowing like the Aruch HaShulchan, that once it's for the next day, you make a new bracha. Then Sif Beis is a makom kviyasa b'sil chalas Pesach b'tefach samach l'chutz. We saw about this. Then at Barichus we had you put it on the outside tefach. We had 2 days in the Rishonim. Either it's because you want to be pagea b'mitzvah tchila as soon as possible. Even the inches make a difference, which is a strong musar on that. And or it's to be for the shmira, that the further out it is, the more it's shomer on more of the bais. Also a very fascinating point. And since the ikar seems to be because of the shmira, then there was a question in the Achronim. We saw the Klosenberger, the Tshuva, Klosenberger's Divrei Yatziv, a question whether this din applies to the internal rooms of the house as well, because if once you already have the shmira on the outside of the house, then that covers the whole house. Then you have a mezuzah on each door because it's a mitzvah. But mitzad the tefach hasamach, they had a shaila there. He said his grandfather was not makbid on the internal rooms, but we came out that we should be makbir on even the internal rooms. It should also be pagea b'mitzvah tchila and shmir and everything else. We ideally you should put it tefach hasamach in the internal rooms as well. Just if you didn't, you said it, you already put it up there. You didn't neglect it to do it, then you don't have to start taking it off and moving it again. To do that in the internal rooms. And we said over here also that the Ramal said, "Imshina ena ma'akev, v'vadshi enichena mezuzah atzma." That the Ramal brings down the Tur that the only thing that's ma'akev is that it's on the right side. According to the Tur himself, even the shlish elyon is not ma'akev, or acharia delis is also not ma'akev as long as it's on the right side. The Ramah, the Taz points out, and others point out that Ramah just brings this din of the Tur, the Imshin Enim Akev, the Gabe, the din Tefach HaSamuch, the Pesach. Because after that, the Ramah didn't, after that, the Shulchan Aruch says, B'tchila Shlish Elyon, Go B'Hashar. So the fact that the Ramah did not write his Enim Akev after the din Shlish Elyon, it's mashma the Ramah holds the Shlish Elyon is Ma'akev. The Ramah is not applying the kula of the Tur to the din shlish elyon. So the upper third of the door is ma'akev la'alacha. And based on that, that's where the Taz had his whole cheshbon of what do you do, Rashi and the Rambam, because it's a question of ma'akev, and with the kippah before. V'im kava l'mayla mizeh kshera, if it's above the shlish elyon, so then it's still kosher. Hu she'archikene yamashkav tefach. So the Shulchan Aruch is paskening the Rambam. That's to at least be a tefach away from the top. So this was a big shaila we saw between Rashi and the Rambam, that according to Rashi, the shlish elyon is there's no area within that shlish elyon which is l'chatchila. The entire shlish elyon is l'chatchila. So according to Rashi, even the upper tefach is still kosher. Whereas we said shot in the Rambam that the upper tefach, the reason that the Rambam holds that that's a ma'akev, if it's in the upper tefach, is because we find throughout Hilchos Mezuzah that when it's within a tefach of another area, then it stells too. It already connects to the next area. So it's possible that according to the Rambam, if you put it in the upper tefach, then it's also connecting to the mashkov. It's considered as if you put it on the mashkov. So that was a machlokes Rashi and the Rambam, and the Shulchan Aruch's machmar like the Rambam. The Nekudas HaKesef writes here by Richus to be cholok on that, and holds that it's kosher l'chatchila even in the tefach elyon, like Rashi, and he holds there's really no machlokes. So because of the Nekudas HaKesef, when I saw that this time around, I used to, whenever I would see somebody that has sometimes you'll find people that aren't so religious, whatever, you'll find the mezuzah way up in the top corner. Hopefully it's on the right side. I found people on the left side as well, like that. But if it's on the right side, then although ideally we would say not to have it there, have it closer down. But if somebody has it up there, then it's not ma'akev according to the shach. Then I wouldn't wouldn't have to say anything to them, to start up with them to move it, because they have the shach to rely on, who holds this kosher l'chatchila. So now we go on here to say that v'tzorach l'kava al yamin hanichnas has to be on the right side. We had a drasha like that. The dafka on the tzad hanichnas, which we'll see more about that in Sif Gimel. Some nafkaminas in that we have to be able to determine what is the side that you're really walking into, as opposed to going out of. Ben chiluk benim hu itter yado lo, and this, like, even though by tefillin, if you're an itter yad, if somebody's a lefty, then you put tefillin on the right hand. But even so, if you're a lefty and you're in your house, you still put the mezuzah on the right of everybody, of the majority of the world. So it goes on the right, even if you're a lefty. You cover me small psula, it's mamish puzzle, because it's mamish a drasha gemura deraisa that has to be yamin haknisa. We said beisecha biascha derech biascha, you oker your right leg first to go walk in, and that's a drasha gemura. In a few places in Shas tells us that that's ma'akev, even b'diavad on the left side. So that's why we said that if you have a right mezuzah on the right side, you're chayav, and you have one on the left side but not on the right side, then you're pater legamrei. The sad small has no bearing in halachas mezuzah. And another halacha over here that we discussed, which the machlok zatur and the Rambam, if it's achari hadelis, if it's ma'akev, the Shachir speaks it out, that if it's going to be put in the achari hadelis, then the Shach says to put it out below bracha, unless it's shasat chak, which he said, for example, if it's dangerous to put it outside, or they're going to take it or something, or they don't allow you to do it, so you can put it on the achari hadelis. And we have the tour to rely on, according to Shittas tour, that all these dinim are not ma'akev as long as it's on the right side, including achari hadelis. Then we said that you put it up there to be samach on the tour. And we saw the Shittas Igros Moshe, the Rebbe first said in his name, that according to Moshe, anything within the halal Pesach, anything within that halal, within the space of the doorway, is all considered tochadelis, not achari which is a big kula. Sometimes we need to rely upon that. Others said, we saw from the Chai Adam and the Nishmas Adam, that he held that it's also considered tocha pesach as long as it's within 3 tvachim behind the door and it's on the door frame. If there's an internal door frame, then it's within 3 tvachim of the actual door, then it's also considered within the pesach. It's all batal to the pesach and considered inside. It's not. He held that according to Rashi, it's only considered achari hadelis if there is no door frame. It's behind the door and there's no door frame which connects it to the door. It has to be within 3 tvachim, because otherwise it's just considered stam on the wall. It doesn't connect to the door whatsoever. You have nothing to rely on at all. But if it's within 3 tvachim of the door and there is no door frame, that would be the case of achari hadelis according to the Chai Adam, and that would be the case that the Shach was saying you could rely on even on that. In the case of shasat chak, it would be considered kosher according to the Torah. So, okay. Any questions about that before we go on? Is that a little complicated? We're good? Okay. Now in Sif Gimel, yes?
Yeah, Rebbe?
Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes on a door frame, it'll be meaning ideally you should put it on the inner post, but technically you could put it on the outer side. Does it matter if it's the front, meaning coming into the doorway, or when you come into the doorway on the right side, like once you're already in the room? Does that make sense?
You mean that, let's say you have a wide door space, you have a wide frame, and you have the door like in the middle of it, so there's a few tvachim on either side of it?
Well, yeah. The achari hadelis could either be on the door coming into the door, or once you're already in the room. It could be both on both sides of the post. When you have the molding, the molding usually is on both sides, often the outside and on the inside of the room. So is Achoria Delis on the inside or on the outside? That's what I'm asking.
Achoria Delis always means behind the door, means behind the way you walk in. So follow. In other words, it'll be
Right.
So behind when you pass by the door on the way in the room. But just according, we have Ramosha's kula. Not everybody holds this. It's clearly not that way according to some Achorna. Ramosha has a kula to say that as long as you're within that framework, within the molding, anything within the molding is not a Chariadelis. It's all considered Tochadelis, even though the door might be before it or after it. That's Ramosha's kula. I don't think everybody holds that way, but it's what to rely on to consider. Like sometimes there's a reason. Let's say I've seen doors that the door, the way you walk in, let's say the molding is 8 inches or 6 inches wide, and the door, you walk in this way, and the door is attached with a hinge on the very beginning of that molding. Then you have decent sized molding after it, and there's nowhere to put the mezuzah and the molding inside the halal in front of the door on the way in, but there's plenty of room behind it. So according to Moshe, you could put it chatchila behind it, and it's not considered a chariadelis yet because it's still within the molding. It's still within the halal. Within the molding, we'll call that halal haPesach, what the person call. So that would be
so
that would be
meaning the mezuzah would.
Sorry,
meaning like the mezuzah would be inside the room.
Inside the halal haPesach, which would be inside the room, which would be facing towards the room. Which you close the door, it would be on the room side, not on the door, on the other door side. That would be
and if there's a possibility to put it on the outside, like
so. For Moshe, it's better to put it there than putting it outside, because outside the halal haPesach. It would be just it's outside of the space of the door. It's just on the door frame, which that's worse.
Even though you would be missing out on the shmira and on the pogei b'mitzvah tchila, whatever, from the outside, still better to be on the Pesach.
Right, because what's the most chashuv of all is in all these things is to have it within the halal haPesach. So according to Moshe, that's where it should go.
So if you have, let's say, like I've seen, let's say a sliding door, where the door like sort of fits into so there's mamish no doorpost even, and there's nowhere to put it. What would you do in that case? On the inside also?
So if you're able to, the ideal thing in that case to do is to have someone come and drill out an area to have it put into the halal haPesach. That's the ideal way to do it. If for some reason you can't do that, let's say you're renting someplace, whatever, you can't start drilling in the doorway, then you would put it on the frame of the sliding door on the right side, on the way in. You put it on the outside in the frame towards coming in. Yeah. Okay, then we spoke about Sif Gimel. Just to review that Sif Gimel Mishacholek Beis L'Shnayim V'B'Chol Chelik Pesach Pasuach L'Shasarabim V'Mechitza Cholekes Yesh Pesach Mizeh Mizeh V'Makom She'osim Hachor She'Besaf She'Tzir Dela Sobabo Ma'amin Shamet Lasos Hu Abayis V'Derech Yamin Shenachnasim Lo Koben Losa. Okay, so the case here is that you have, imagine a rectangular form. So that rectangle is split in the middle. So you have two rooms, and with a doorway in between them. You equally walk back and forth between those two rooms, and each of those two rooms has an opening to it has an equal opening to the street. So you can equally walk into the house, into room A or room B from the street, and there's an open doorway right in between those two. If everyone's got that picture. So now, Lu Yitzur, you say that the main, let's say one of the rooms is just really for an entry hall more. It's not so much used for living or whatever in the main. It's just to go into, let's say, from the right room to the left room, and you're really living in the left room. That's where you have your living room and your kitchen and everything like that, and the right room and in the bedroom. And the right room is just more of a knisa. So obviously, you put it, even if there's no heker seer, you put it on the right. In the in between rooms, you put it on the right, on the way into going into the left room, because that's where you're gonna. It's mainly for the sake of going into that room. The doorway is going into the left side, but if they're equally used, like in let's say there's a bedroom on either side, and there's kitchen in one and a living room on the other. You live in both equally, so there's no way to determine which is when you pass between the two rooms. There's no way to determine on its own right which one is really going in and which is going out, and which is the ikr, which is the tuffle. They're both equally important, and you equally walk back and forth between the two. So then you have to come on to heker et seer, which if the door opens up into one of the rooms, then the seer, like the hinge, is opening the door into one room or the other. Then where it opens into, we say zehu bais. That's the ikr place that the gabi these dinim, the ikr bais mitzah, the bia sabais, the beischa biascha. So when you walk in, is ikr that way. So the heker seer is only there to determine when there's no other way to determine it. If one way is the ikr, let's say one room is the ikr, but the door opens the other way, then heker seer is non-consequential. It doesn't matter, because we already determined it by the ikr, by where's the ikr derech bia. It's only when they're this is what Rashi explains, and that's what comes out of the Shulchan Aruch, that it's only when they're equal as far as their bia, as far as their shimush, as far as their importance, and which way is the ikr way to walk in. They're both, there is no ikr. Then the heker seer kicks in. Now, in the heker seer, they were kaveh by the heker seer. Now, in a case where you go back to the original case here that you cannot tell, there is no ikr, and there is no heker seer. For example, either there's no door at all, or let's say you have these like double doors that open this way and that way. So whichever way you're going in, the doors are going to open that way. If you go the other way, they open the other way. So mainly you have no heker seer. So then we spoke out, according to our Moshe says in a tshuva that door is putter, because the din derech biyascha, that it have to be kaveya, which way is the derech biyah, either through the shimush or through the heker seer. That's the ikuva, just like two doorposts is the ikuva, just like yamin is the ikuva. Also, derech biyascha is the ikuva. You can't, if they don't have a derech biyascha, more than the other, it's putter legamrei. And he's docha the achronim that say that you should put it on both sides. Which there are those that say it's a problem of Baal Tosef to put it on both sides. There was a cholek we spoke out once from the Binyan Sion, a question also with a similar type of question with the Rabbi Kvieger's case, with the case of a small closet, if Kvieger should go back into the other room or etc. So we had there a shaila about Baal Tosef if you put it on both sides. Al Kaponim, Ramosha held you certainly shouldn't put it on both sides, and therefore you shouldn't put it at all. But there are achronim, important achronim that say put it on both sides. Shmuel first said that although he usually always passes with his Rebbe Ramosha, he said in this halacha we don't go like Ramosha. In this case, we put it be'ezed tzad sheyirtzeh. The minhag olam is yes to put it up, but not to put up two, because that we never do. But to put it in any side you want, then you're yotzei. That's the minhag. I would say if you're doing that, then if that would be the only door you're putting up, I would put it up without a bracha, because according to our Moshe, it's pacha legamrei. Okay.
In general, one of the cases you gave for heker tzir was an entranceway without a door. Do we hold like the Rambam by a Pesach without a door to not make a bracha?
Yes, we saw that from the Shach.
Okay, so in any case, like if there's no door, no bracha.
Right, but the case that would be a shiloh would be if you have, let's say, a double door. Like
a double door, or would a sliding door also be the same shiloh?
I think so. Yeah.
There's no heker tzir.
just the sliding door. I don't know if that's called Hekert Seer, if it slides one way or the other, because it slides sideways, not into a room. So it's probably doesn't become a Hekert Seer with the horror.
What about like a garage door if the door comes from the ceiling? Or like a tris, like in Israel, I imagine you had a door that it came down and up.
Interesting question, but according to the Rambam, that is a door, because the sod of a door isn't the fact that it swings. The sod of the door is that it creates tznius and diras abatim. So the way the Acharnim explain the Rambam, it's not totally clear if that means that. There's some say that it just has a Shem Pesach, but one way or the other, I would be mistaber to say that I would give it a din of a door for a bracha. Yeah, so if you're just putting it up on the garage door, for example, and you use the garage for a lot of things, so you're just putting a new mezuzah on the garage door, then the you should make a bracha, even according to the Rambam. Good question. Okay. Now, in Sif Gimel, also in the Taz over here speaks out of Shaila, which we discussed once, that Pesach Chatzar. If the Pesach Chatzar, if you have a doorway in the house, that the Iker is there to go out into the Chatzar, which the Chatzar has a lot of tashmishim you do out there, and it's also fenced in. So the Taz learns that you would put the mezuzah on the way out to the Chatzar. The Chazon Ish is strongly cholik and holds that the bais is always the Iker, and even though the Iker Shimush is to go out to the Chatzar, but everything is always bottled to the bais. The Chatzar Gufa, he learns, is only chayav. Not that we learn pshat in the rush that Chatzar is chayav on its own right. Chazon Ish learns a different pshat in the rush and holds that the Chatzar itself is only chayav agav of the house. And everything, any chayav there is always agav of the house, and the house is the Iker according to Chazon Ish. Nafkamina Gdola, the Chatzar itself is Nafkamina, but the famous question in Eretz Yisrael, the Mirpeset Shaila, if you have a Mirpeset, you have the porch that people use for everything there. You put it on the way out to the porch or on the way into the house. So according to the Chazon Ish, the house is always the Iker, and it goes on the way in. The Minig Yerushalayim seems to be on the way in, on the way out to the Mirpeset. That's the Iker Siba, that door would be like the Taz to go out. So it's really a chalukim and hagim between Yerushalayim and Bnei Brak, based on the Chazon Ish and the Poskei Yerushalayim. I think I heard from Rishon Zalman also on the way out. I once discussed, I don't remember clearly what he said when we discussed it. I just remember one thing he said clearly was definitely not to put it on both sides. Decide which way and put it there, but not to put it on both sides. And just on the side, he said it sort of as a criticism for the way things are going in our door. He said, "You'll see that people will yet put it on both sides." He said that that would be like the ultimate, chumrah that shouldn't be done. And I mentioned that to one of the poskim from the Medatz from Moshe Halberstam Zatzal, and he said, "Misken hu lo yedeh shekvar osim." He doesn't know that people are already doing it. But that he said clearly not to do. I heard Rabbi first said that Moshe, he saw his Mirpeset there. He had a small Mirpeset, but he put it on the way out to the Mirpeset. So Moshe, I guess, held like Minig Yerushalayim, which it's sort of hard to pascha in this because but we do have Moshe going like the Minig Yerushalayim. Okay, that's a question in the Taz here in Sif Gimel. Moving along to in Sif Daled, it says Ketzad Kova Yimasmerena b'Masmerim. You should nail it in with nails. This is a Pesach, or Yachbar ba Chafira, or you should dig it out and put it into the where it's dug in. Yikvena ba. So then Acharnim are medayek that since it only mentions the Masmerim by the first thing, Yachbar ba. It's mashma if you dig it out, you don't need masmerim as long as it's in there safely. You don't need you're fine without masmerim. Well, yamik lachpor tefach omek shimasa kempsula can't go with it further tefach because then it's considered in the wall. Like we say, tefach is the bikovea for hilchos mezuzah all the time. Now, some achronim say that the ideal thing is to actually use real masmerim. The Aruch HaShulchan says mali masmerim, mali devek. What difference does it make if it's nails or some kind of glue that's really going to keep it attached properly? So, I mean, many times today our mezuzahs we have this special two-way tape and glue, and as long as it's there in a solid way that it's going to stay, it's not going to fall off easily. Then you don't say many times people put it up with tape, which is if you shas tzach you can do that. I don't recommend that. It's not hit or mitzvah. It's not kashmak, and sometimes if it stays too long with the tape, like masking tape, or whatever, then sometimes it might still stay attached, but the mezuzah sort of slowly moves off of the door, and it just attaches in the tape, but it's not really dovuk anymore to the actual doorway. So then there are those who say that becomes puzzle, like the first sugi we learned of talab masmer. It's like you're hanging it on a it's like hanging on a nail that's sticking out, protruding. So it's right now the masmer will be the tape, which is it's attached to the tape, but it's not attached to the doorway because it's separated already, because it dries out and separates. So if someone has tape up, they have to really watch it and make sure that it stays attached firmly to the door frame to be yotzei. Okay, and then we had in Sifei, we're not going to go back into the din of Tassel and Asu. We spoke about that a lot. Sivav has to be, said the Shulchan Aruch passes it should be skufa, which we had a machlokas Rabbeinu Tam and Rashi, where they're supposed to be straight up and down according to Rashi. According to Rabbeinu Tam, it's supposed to be laying down. The Ramah, based on the Tur, says that we should have it ba'alachson. We should put it at a slant to be yotzei both Rashi and the Tur. And the question is, how are you yotzei either that way? If it's supposed to be straight up and down, it's not straight up and down. If it's supposed to be flat, then it's not flat. If it's an alachson, so we explained that being the Rashi, being the Rabbeinu Tam, it's not a din that it should be straight up and down according to Rashi. It's just according to Rashi, it cannot be laying down. And according to Rabbeinu Tam, it's not that it should be dafka laying down; it just can't be straight up and down. So if it's balachson, you're really yotzei both, because according to Rashi, it's not laying down because it's partly up, and according to Rabbeinu Tam, it's not up and down because it's partly laying down. So you yotzei both according to the Tur and the Ramah. But the minhag of Sfardim is like the Shulchan Aruch, that they do put it straight up and down, and the minhag of Ashkenazim is to put it ba'alachson. I think I'm going to mention that just a nice drasha. If you ever speak at a Sheva Brachos, that there was a darshan that passed through town here and told me once that you build a house and you try to build everything straight with right angles and everything should be proper and straight. So suddenly over here with mezuzah, when you move in, all of a sudden you put it crooked. What's going on over here? So he said, well, why do we put it crooked? Because there are two days over here. There's Rashi and there's Rabbeinu Tam. You don't want to, so we're trying to be yotzei both. So he said that the message is mezuzah chovas hadar. It's the last thing you put up before you actually move in to live, to tell you that there's reminder that there's 2 days in the house. Nobody should be sholit. There's a husband and wife, and each one needs to bend a little bit to conform to the day of the other one. That's why you have shalom bayis, the way the mezuzah stands. So this would be a message of one Hashem, but it's also a message of shalom bayis every time you walk in the house, that we have to be not stand on your opinion, but you have to be able to bend to try to make it work for everybody. So based on that, who knows? Then maybe there's a different mahalach in the house of the Sfardim. Maybe there's only one opinion. But okay, we'll leave that for. Okay. Now in Reis Tzadi Aleph, we have the mezuzos yochid nimdekas pamayim b'sheva shanim sharabim pamayim b'yovel. So by us, we have to check our mezuzahs every 7 years. It's important to keep track of that. And the Birchei Yosef says over here that sometimes you have halachas, you have to be check certain things. If you check 3, then let's say certain types of leaves. If it's shayana matzim by bugs, you check a few leaves and it's good enough for the whole batch. At certain times, over here he says that does not help to say I'll check 3. I have 10 mezuzahs. I'll check 3, and if they're all good, then that tells me the rest are good. We don't say that because lo kol makam shavim. Every place is different. Where we're concerned about moisture or other factors that might, sunlight or moisture, whatever the factors that might make a difference. The fact that 3 are fine doesn't say anything more about 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So when there's a time to check it, you got to really check them all. That's the Birka Yosef. And also, we just mentioned that when you do check it, so then if you check it yourself, you don't necessarily always have to take, when you check it, to send it to a sofer. Because if you knew to begin with that they're good kosher mezuzahs, they were checked out to begin with when you first put them up. You knew you bought it from a sofer Yerei Shamayim and everything's fine with it. You don't have a thing now to be, you're not supposed to, every 3.5 years to check and see if it's written properly. Nobody wrote anything in the last 3.5 years. You're just checking to make sure that moisture didn't get in and the letters aren't running or blotted out or something like that. So anybody can check that themselves. You don't have to send that away to check that. You don't need a sofer to check that unless you mamish have no idea what you're looking at. But it's just to open up and see if it's still intact and everything looks fine. As long as you knew it was good to begin with, then you have no reason to send it away to anybody. If you have a shilah, something cracked or whatever, you look at it carefully. If anything might have cracked and you have a shilah, so then that's something else. And on that, we said that if it goes overnight, then you make a new bracha and you put it back up. Otherwise, check it yourself and that's fine. Okay, and
can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Is there a reason that the Shulchan Aruch says once every 7 years and not every 3.5 years?
He says
twice every 7.
Yeah, there's something about that. I don't remember why that's said that way. Because it's maybe it doesn't have to be exactly. I once saw something about that, but I don't remember. It's a good question. I think it's a lesson of Brisa, but the question is why does Brisa say it that way? Based on a lesson of Brisa.
In any case where mezuzah is only there mitzad chumrah, let's say we put mezuzahs on a school, is there any Indian to do a bedika?
Well, that's mezuzah harabim, and that'll be twice every 50 years. So you got some time.
Twice every 50.
Pamayim b'yovel says so. Twice every 50 years. Okay, going on to Sif Beis. We said there socher bais mechavero, very complicated halachos. We're not going to go through all over again, but your socher bais mechavero, socher chayav l'kavah mezuzah. There's no mezuzah there, then the socher, the renter, has to put up mezuzah. Sakem makom kuyusa, and he has to prepare a place to put it there. Even in the Ramah says, if you socher bais v'cheska sheyesh l'mezuzah lahavi mechaktois, you thought there was mezuzah, and now you come and you see there's not, suddenly you got to put the expenditure of new mezuzahs. That's not considered a mekaktois because the mitzvah is on you, even though you thought that that they're going to be mezuzahs. Because she hates it, when you leave, you have to expend that and you can't take it biyado. And we spoke about the dime biyado because it's a din zilzal to do the ma'isa to take it down. When there's going to be another yid moving in, that we saw that stipulation, I'll upon him, that has to be another, if it's a goyim moving in, or it's a goyish owner and you don't know who's moving in, so you don't know who's moving in, it's a goyish owner, then not only are you allowed to, but you should take it because the mezuzah should not get mezuzah. But in the case where there is a Jew moving in and you have very expensive mezuzah you put up there, or they have sentimental value, so Rav Moshe said that itself is not a good enough reason to take it down. But you could require the person to pay. They only need to pay for the cheapest mezuzah l'chatchila, the kashal l'chatchila, not pay your full amount. But the eitzah would be Rav Henkin's eitzah, which he said you can rely on, is if they're going to be taken down to be painted anyway. In those days, I guess everybody always painted their houses when they rented them. I don't know if they would do that. Everyone does that today. But in the case where they're going to be taken down anyway to be painted or something, then you're allowed to do that. And then once they're down for another reason, then you're allowed to take them. You just can't take them down for the sake of taking them. So then that would be the Eitzah in that case. And if the Shulchan Aruch ends off, not l'vyotze, from a goy or to a goy, because that's a zilzal the mezuzah to leave it for a goy. And we saw also in the Piskei Tshuva from Reb Kiveger that he said that if you rent a house and you move in now for the first time, the mezuzah is up there. He said, even though you're not putting them up, they're already there. The Reb Kiveger said, you should make a bracha, because it's a new mitzvah now for you. These mezuzahs are a new mitzvah for you, and he stretched it further to say, even every time you go out, if you go take a business trip for a couple of days and come back, so since you're away from the house, you weren't makayim mezuzah. Now it's a new chiyuv mezuzah. You should make a bracha. So we saw from the Birkei Yosef held not that way, just mitzad, not mitzad the svora, but mitzad hilchos brachas. Reb Kiveger is obviously holding that the mitzvah mezuzah is a mitzvah mischadeshes mizman l'zman. It's constantly mischadesh, and so it's a new mitzvah every time you go in, and therefore you should make a new bracha every time you come in. The Birkei Yosef just said that we don't do that. The minhag is not to do that because it's in hilchos brachas. You have to actually do a ma'isa, and you're not doing a ma'isa unless you're putting it up. When you just walk in the house, that's not called a ma'isa for the mezuzah. So mitzad that is why you don't make a bracha, but he agrees in the svara that you should make a bracha mitzad that it is a new mitzvah chadeshes, which we discussed then with the Machlokes and Magen Avram and the Rizal, as far as whether David HaMelech was considered to be having mitzvah surrounding him all the time at night. You need to come on to tzitzis at night, or because at night you have a mezuzah on you, which the Magen Avram learned that way, which would conform with Reb Kiveger to say that that you're constantly, it's like a new mitzvah called rega v'rega, and that's what the svara why Rav Moshe held that when you rent and you put it up right away, you can make a new bracha after 30 days, even though you already put it up before. It's not like the mitzvah is done already before, because the mitzvah is mischadesh kol rega v'rega, that you're in the house. So you're always before the mitzvah. It's always over l'siyasan. Like Warren Psachim, Dav Zion says you need a bracha over l'siyasan before you do the mitzvah. So mezuzah is always before you do the mitzvah, because it's always a new mitzvah called rega v'rega. So at least that you said you do see from Rabbi Kiveger. Okay, I think that really sort of completes what we're going to be doing in the Chazara and from the Shirim. So wow, we had 22 Shirim on mezuzah. very, very serious limud, more than not even expected it to be. Baruch Hashem. So now it's just ready. Hopefully we'll be have some with all the newly found time being home to have plenty of time to chazer now between now and the end of Pesach. So after Pesach, Mitzvah Hashem will have the bechina on mezuzah, and after that, Mitzvah Hashem will go on to the next limud, Mitzvah Hashem, after Pesach. So it's a little bit late. I just say one ha'ara. A few people asked to repeat from last year to manishtana halayla hazeh mikol haleilos, that just a thought that manishtana halayla, according to the Gra, manishtana halayla hazeh mikol haleilos is, the question is that Laila is lashon nekeva. The Gra says, I would say Laila la Laila Yechava Das. Laila belongs to Chava, we say in Shabbos morning, and Yom is lashon Zachar. So that's why the Laila is, which belongs to Nekeva. Laila is pater from most mitzvahs shazman grama, tzitzis, tefillin, mezuzah. Lulav, shofar, etc. They're all during the day, and it's because Zachar and men are chayav, women are pater, pturos, because mitzvahs shazman grama. It belongs to day, not to night. A Pesach is different. Pesach suddenly is a different situation than any other night, because all the mitzvahs of Pesach are dafka at night. Matzah, Mora, Achilas, Korban Pesach, Sipris, Yes Mitzrayim, and even the Rabbanas, the Alkosis, they're all dafka at night. You're not Yotzei during the day. So this night is like a zachar. It's like a lashon zachar. It's like a day. So that's the and women are all chayavos in those mitzvahs also. They're at night, and women are chayavos. They become like men, and the day becomes like men, becomes like a lashon zachar. So that's what the Gra says, that the amkus of manishtana halayla hazeh lashon zachar, we call haleilos from all the other nights lashon nekeva. That's what the Gra says, and the answer the Gra doesn't say, but the answer the Gra comes out from the whole Haggadah itself, from the Yisod of the Haggadah, is that the Taka that night was different than any other night, because we say later on that we had Mora Gadol Zeh Gilu Shechina. The Mora Gadol, the awesome fear they had was from the Gilu Shechina. When there's Gilu Shechina, so the unfortunate say, whenever there's Gilu Shechina, there's an incredible revelation of light, and there was light that was so powerful that it never got dark that night. Leil Yitzias Mitzrayim. That's why they could do bris milah that night. This is Dam Pesach and Dam Milah, when Rabbin was there, they could do bris milah that night, even though bris milah is puzzle at night. But that night never became night. It remained light with the Gilu Shechina that there was, the incredible Gilu Shechina. And the Gilu Shechina was so powerful that you couldn't even tell when the day started, because the sunlight is considered like lighting a match in midday. It's like if that light, which is a little bit of the light, which was Nisgala B'Yemei Breishis, Rashi says it was hidden for the tzaddikim with Lasu Lavo. So when there's nisim like that, it's like a puncture, a little pinhole in the black canopy that's hiding that light. It's Asid Lisgalas Lasu Lavo. That little bit of that light came Leil Yitzias Mitzrayim and turned it into a brilliant light, which turned it into a day. And that's really why I think the amkus of why Rabbi Akiva, V'Chaverav, and Bnei Brak, so they were Mesubim Kol Osa Laila, and they were Marba L'Saper Kol Osa Laila, until the Talmidim came and said, Rabbeinu Higiyaz Man Kriyas Moshe Shachris. So everyone asked, why did the Talmidim see the day and they didn't see the day? Some say they're in a cave maybe or whatever, or they're so into it, all possible. But I think the amkus is that light that was shown then, Rav Dethler says that we don't go straight ahead in time. We go around in a circle in time. And we travel around the year, and we get to certain times, and we get to that Yom Tov. So the light that Hashem revealed, that every different Yom Tov, different hues and nuances of light are revealed fully in their full splendor and glory and all their brilliance, just at that time of year. When we enter the time of the year, just we don't necessarily see it. Our windows aren't clean enough to let the light shine in. But for those that are the high madrega, they can mamish see the same light that was revealed at that time. So Rikiva v'Chaverav, that were seeing that light that was revealed at that time, they were living it. They were chayav adam liras atzmuk yatzim Mitzrayim. They're mamish reliving Yitzias Mitzrayim. They were able to see the light as bright as it was back in that time. So then for them, they couldn't tell when the sun came up. The Talmidim were under that madrega; they could see the sunlight. But Rabbi Akiva v'Chaverav, in Bnei Brak, they couldn't even see the sunlight because it was so dim compared to the light that they were living in at that time. Because the Pesach is there, the light is there. Just we have to tap into it, and that's why Chazal could be mechayav us to see ourselves like Mitzrayim. Even though we never saw pyramid, we never been in slavery actually, but we are able to tap into that light what's really there if we work on ourselves. Work on learning about it and prepare all the preparations and all the subliminal suggestions. Leil Pesach, we're able to tap in to that light which is really there of Yitzias Mitzrayim, and to relive it and to really feel that. So Mr. Hashem will have that schus. We'll work on it with these days that we have, and that'll bring us that'll transcend us above a lot of the darkness that's descended on the world right now, to reconnect to that higher light, because we as B'nai Torah have that potential to do that. And Mr. Hashem, that light will illuminate the world when Pesach comes, to put an end to all the tzaras and all the things, and we'll see the real light, that real revelation of that light when we come back to Yerushalayim B'Hirav Yameinu. And Chag Kasher V'Sameach.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Refuah Shalema.
Amen.
Refuah Shalema.